The sky above New Gyeongju was a soft peach color, the kind that happened just before the smaller sun set. Jinwoo sat in the dirt of his greenhouse, his hands buried in the soil around the roots of a tomato plant. He was checking for pests. His sister, Sumi, said he spent too much time here. She said the colony needed his skills for more important things than old earth vegetables. But Jinwoo liked the quiet, the smell of damp earth, and the simple, clear work. Across the compound, Sumi was finishing her reports. Her office was neat, everything in its place. She was a good administrator. She cared about the people in New Gyeongju, all 5,000 of them. She worried about supply quotas and air filter maintenance and making sure the school had enough learning pads. It was practical, everyday care. Her brother's quiet gardening seemed like a hobby to her, but she let him have it. Everyone needed something. Their friend Tae was at the mining outpost, a 30-minute shuttle ride away. He was fixing a laser drill again. It was always breaking. He wiped grease from his forehead with the back of his hand and muttered to himself, "Great design, just brilliant, probably built on a Monday." He enjoyed the fight with the machinery. It was a puzzle he could solve with his hands and his mind. The first sign was not a sound. It was a shadow that fell across the greenhouse, making the peach light go cold. Jinwoo looked up. A ship hung in the sky. It was not like any human ship. It was smooth and silent, shaped like a falling teardrop. It made no noise, no engine roar, no rumble. It just was. It was so quiet that the quiet itself became loud. All across the colony, people stopped and looked up. They stepped out of homes and workshops. In the central square, Sumi stood with others, her report forgotten in her hand. The ship was beautiful and terribly wrong. A voice did not come from it. Instead, soft, colored lights pulsed along its hull. Blue, then silver, then a pale green. The patterns were gentle, like ripples on water. A translation came through the colony's public speakers. The voice was flat, calm, and without any feeling. People of Earth, we are the harmonious consensus. We observe your settlement. We have assessed your species. A second ship, then a third, appeared just as silently. They formed a perfect triangle in the sky. The translated voice continued. You are a chaos species. Your biological and emotional architecture is volatile. You feel too deeply. You rage. You despair. You love with a destructive fire. This chaos is a threat to the stable fabric of galactic peace. It is a noise that disrupts the universal silence. Sumi felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Jinwoo stood up from the dirt, his heart beating hard against his ribs. On his wrist calm, a message from Tae flashed. You seeing this? We do not come to destroy, the voice said. The lights on the ships pulsed a soothing lavender. Destruction is a product of the chaos you embody. We come to offer peace, a true, lasting peace. We will silence the storm within you. A fine, glittering mist began to fall from the ships. It caught the dying sunlight, looking almost beautiful, like gold dust. It fell over the entire colony, over the greenhouses, the homes, the people standing in the square. Do not be afraid, the voice said, and the words felt like a command. The sanction is a gift. It is a correction. You will thank us for the stillness. The mist touched Jinwoo's skin. It was cool. He watched it settle on the leaves of his tomato plants. He saw a woman nearby, a farmer named Hannah. Breathe it in and then look at her hands, confused. He breathed it in too. Smelled like nothing at all. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a wave of dizziness passed over him. He put a hand on the greenhouse wall to steady himself. He heard a child laugh in the distance, and then the laugh cut off suddenly. As if switched off, he stumbled out of the greenhouse towards the square where he had last seen Sumi. People were moving around, but slowly. Their faces were blank. A man who had been arguing with his neighbor about a water line simply turned and walked away, his earlier anger gone without a trace. His neighbor looked at the pipe, then dropped his tools and walked off too. Jinwoo found Sumi standing exactly where she had been. Her tablet was on the ground at her feet. She was looking at the ships, her face smooth and calm. "Sumi," Jinwoo said. His voice felt too loud. She turned her head to look at him. Her eyes were clear, intelligent, but empty. They were like glass. "Jinwoo," she said. Her voice was the same as the translated voice from the ship. Flat, calm. "The harmonious consensus has granted us peace. There is no more need for worry." What did they do?" he asked, a hot spike of fear pushing through the strange fog in his mind. "They gave us silence," she said, and a small, polite smile touched her lips. It was a movement of muscles, nothing more. "It is better this way. No more chaos. No more pain." Jinwoo looked around. All across the square, people were acting the same. They were moving, talking, but it was like watching robots. The urgency of life was gone. The worry in a mother's eye, the passion in an argument, the deep joy of a reunion. All of it was wiped clean. New Gyeongju had become a museum of people. The teardrop ships pulsed a final, soft blue light. The translation voice spoke one last time. "The sanction is complete. You are now harmonious. You will prosper in quiet. The noise is over." Without a sound, the ships rose. They shrank to dots, then to nothing, leaving behind a colony under a perfect, terrible silence. The only sound was the whisper of the wind through the hydroponic vents. Jinwoo stood beside his sister, the only person in 5,000 who felt a scream building inside him. A scream that had no place in this new, still world. The colony of New Gyeongju worked. The air filters hummed. The water recyclers spun. Food was grown and distributed. Children went to learning modules and learned facts without laughter or frustration. It was a perfect, silent machine. But Jinwoo was breaking. A year had passed. To everyone else, it was a year of calm efficiency. To Jinwoo, it was a year of living buried alive. The virus had worked on him, but not correctly. He could feel it inside his head. A cold, transparent film trying to smother every feeling. When he saw the empty look in Sumi's eyes, a powerful grief would rise in his chest. The cold film would push it down, flatten it. The grief did not disappear. It was trapped, pressing against the inside of his ribs. A heavy, aching stone that could not be moved. That he felt everything this way. A flicker of anger at a broken tool became a tight ball in his stomach, held in place. A memory of his mother's smile brought a wave of longing that crashed against the dam in his mind and pooled there, stagnant and painful. He was the only person left who remembered what feeling was, and now it was a sickness, a constant, grinding pressure. His only refuge was his greenhouse. The council, which was what the comm colonists now called their administration, saw no real use for it. But they did not stop him. Stopping him would require a strong opinion, and no one had those anymore. Sumi, who was on the council, had simply said, "The plants are not a priority, but they are not a problem. He may continue." So Jinwoo continued. He tended his earth tomatoes, his chili peppers, his rows of lettuce. He pretended to be as calm as the others. He moved slowly. He spoke in a soft, even voice. Inside, he was screaming. One day, while checking the soil pH, the pressure became too much. A simple memory surfaced, before the sanction, telling a stupid joke about the laser drill. The happiness of that moment hit Jinwoo. The cold film shoved it down. The trapped feeling was so intense it made him dizzy. He stumbled and put his hand out. Knocking over a tray of seedlings, he knelt in the dirt, staring at the spilled soil and tiny broken plants. A tear fell from his eye. He felt the wet track on his cheek, a physical sign of the internal war. He was crying, but he did not feel the release of crying. It was just another trapped symptom as he cleaned up the mess. His hand brushed against the colony datapad he used to track growth cycles. Without thinking, he typed in a search. He typed sanction. Medical. Report. The colony's medical files were not locked. Why would they be? Secrecy was a product of fear or ambition. No one felt those things anymore. He found the official analysis of the consensus virus. It was a cold, clinical document. It explained how the retrovirus targeted the human limbic system, the brain's emotion center. It did not destroy it. Instead, it created a powerful feedback suppressor. It stopped emotional signals from amplifying. A spark of anger could not become a fire. A hint of sadness could not become grief. Everything was reduced to a faint, background hum. Jinwoo read the document again and again. He looked at the chemical diagrams. He was a botanist, not a doctor, but he understood plant neurochemistry, how certain compounds could stimulate or inhibit growth. An idea began to form in his mind. It was a dark, desperate idea. It pushed against the suppressing film, and the film pushed back, making his head ache. What if the suppressor could be overloaded? Not removed, but attacked. The document said the virus worked like a regulator on a pipe, only letting a trickle of emotion through. What if you forced the entire ocean through that pipe at once? He started working in secret. He used his knowledge of plants. In the back of his greenhouse, he grew a small, hidden patch of specialized flora. Some were from Earth, known for strong alkaloids. Others were native new Gyeongju fungi that affected neural functions. He used his colony access to request basic medical nanites, tiny machines used for simple repairs in the body. He said he was experimenting on plant cell structure. The council approved. It was a logical request. His project was not a cure. He knew he could not reverse the virus for 5,000 people. That would take a fleet of doctors and a mountain of resources he did not have. He was building a weapon. He called it the resonance in his mind. If the consensus weapon suppressed feedback, his weapon would create a catastrophic feedback loop. It would take the latent emotional capacity of a brain, all the rage, love, fear, and joy that was pressed down, and ignite it all at once. It would not just open the floodgates. It would blow up the dam. Late one night, he tested a prototype on a lab rat. The colony still had some for basic research. The rat was calm, docile, affected by a simpler version of the sanction. He administered his compound. For a second, nothing happened. Then the rat froze. It began to tremble. It did not attack or try to escape. It just shook, its eyes wide with a level of pure, overwhelming sensation it had no way to process. It experienced every possible rat emotion at maximum intensity for about 10 seconds. Then its heart stopped. Jinwoo sat in the silence of his hidden lab, looking at the small, still body. He felt no victory. He felt no horror. Both those feelings were trapped inside him, adding to the crushing weight. He only felt a cold, hard certainty. This would work. He looked at a photo on his desk. It was of him, Sumi, and Tae before. They were laughing. Sumi's eyes were bright. Tae was making a peace sign. Jinwoo's own smile looked foreign to him now. He turned back to his work. He had the key. Now he needed to find a way to deliver it. The harmonious consensus had given its gift to New Gyeongju. Jinwoo would send a gift back to them. A gift of all the chaos they had tried to silence. He would make them feel every single bit of it. Jinwoo's secret lab was a small, clean room behind the main water tanks for the greenhouse. The hum of the pumps was a constant sound, hiding any noise he made. The air was warm and carried the scent of damp soil and sharp chemicals. On a table sat his life's work, a vial of clear liquid. It looked like water. It was the most dangerous thing on the planet. He called it the resonance. It was finished. The problem was delivery. He could not fly a ship to the consensus homeworld. He did not even know where it was. All he had was the old colony communications array, a dish on a hill outside the main dome. It was used to talk to Earth back when anyone felt like talking. Now it was silent. The council saw no need for constant chatter. Reports were sent once a month. Dry lists of numbers and facts. A plan formed in Jinwoo's mind. It was a simple, brutal plan. The consensus had sent their virus to New Gyeongju in a mist. He would send his weapon back through the same kind of channel they monitored. A data stream. He went to visit Tae at the mining outpost. The shuttle ride was quiet. The other passengers sat calmly, looking out the windows or at nothing at all. Tae was in the repair bay wiping down a tool rack. His movements were precise and without passion. "Tae," Jinwoo said, his voice carefully flat. "The council is asking about the old deep-range probe, the one in storage. They want to know if its data core is still functional." Tae turned. His face showed mild interest. "The old probe? It is obsolete. This drive is slow. Why? Historical archive, Jinwoo said, reciting the lie he had prepared. Earth Central wants a backup of our early colony logs. The probe's core is a compatible format. I just need to check it.
Tai nodded slowly.
Lying was a complex emotional action. Jinwoo's simple, logical statement did not trigger any suspicion. The idea that his old friend might deceive him did not occur to Tae. Deception required fear or desire. He felt neither. It is in storage bay 3, Tae said. I will get you the access code. An hour later, Jinwoo stood before the probe. It was a dusty, bullet-shaped thing, meant for long, lonely trips into empty space. Its propulsion system was basic but reliable. Its real value was its powerful, long-range transmitter. Working methodically, Jinwoo opened the probe's housing. He ignored the navigation systems. He went straight to the payload bay. He carefully installed his vial of clear liquid into a custom housing he had built. This housing was connected to the probe's transmitter. It was programmed to release the resonance as an aerosol mist the moment the probe signal was received and decoded on the other end. The virus had ridden on nanites. His weapon would ride on a radio wave hidden inside a digital package. Next, he loaded the data core. He did not load colony logs. He uploaded the complete, unedited cultural archive of humanity. He included everything. Scenes from great wars and revolutions, symphony music and rock and roll, paintings of beautiful landscapes and angry, abstract art, poetry about love and loss, films filled with laughter and films filled with tears, the screams of soldiers and the cries of newborn babies. It was the raw, chaotic, beautiful and terrible noise of the human soul. He labeled the transmission file, Final Report on the Human Condition, for the harmonious consensus. The message would be a beacon. The curious, calm consensus would certainly receive it. They would study it as they studied everything. When they opened the file to examine the data of the chaos they had silenced, they would get much more than they expected. They would get the resonance. He closed the probe's housing. He wheeled it to the small outpost launch rail. The controls were simple. He set coordinates not for a specific place, but in the general direction of known consensus space. He set the transmitter to broadcast its package on a continuous loop as soon as it was a safe distance from the colony. His finger hovered over the launch command. He looked back towards the dome of New Gyeongju. He could see the greenhouse, a tiny bubble. In there, Sumi was probably reviewing resource allocations. She would feel a quiet satisfaction if the numbers balanced. Nothing more. He thought of the rat in his lab, its small body overwhelmed by a universe of feeling it could not hold. This was different, he told himself. This was justice. But the feeling of justice was also trapped inside him, a hard, cold knot. He felt no fiery righteousness, only a terrible, heavy necessity. He pressed the button. The launch rail hummed. With a soft whoosh, the probe shot into the pale sky. It quickly became a speck, then vanished into the stars. The deed was done. There was no taking it back. Jinwoo stood there for a long time, watching the empty sky. The pressure inside him, the dam holding back a year of grief and rage and love, began to crack. It did not break, but a fissure opened. He felt everything at the edge of his awareness. A tidal wave waiting to crash. He did not go to the greenhouse. He walked slowly to his small sleeping room in the colony dome. He passed people in the halls. They nodded politely. They did not see the earthquake in his eyes. He entered his room and sat on his bed. He looked at his hands. They were still. The probe was flying into the dark, carrying a silent package of pure noise. Jinwoo had sent the heart of humanity, weaponized, back to its surgeons. Now he had nothing left to do but wait, and feel, for the first time in a year, the terrifying weight of what he had just unleashed begin to settle onto his own soul. The scream was no longer just inside him. It was now hurtling through the silent stars, looking for a home. The probe traveled through the empty dark. This journey took many weeks. It moved steadily, a silent speck, until it reached the edge of space controlled by the harmonious consensus. Automatic sensors noted its approach. They scanned it, They found no weapons, no explosives, no harmful radiation. They detected only a simple data core, broadcasting a weak signal on the consensus homeworld. A watcher received the alert. The watcher was a being of pure logic and calm. His mind was a quiet pool. It saw the probe was from the Chaos Species colony. The colony named New Jiangju. This was interesting. Perhaps the species was sending its surrender, or perhaps data to prove its new harmony. The watcher instructed a small drone to capture the probe and bring it to a receiving station. The process was smooth and silent. The probe was placed in a sterile scan room. The data file was identified, Final Report on the Human Condition. The watcher, along with several other consensus analysts, prepared to examine the file. It was their duty to understand. They linked their minds to the data stream, ready to receive and categorize the information with perfect, emotionless clarity. The file opened. First, there was music, a human symphony, full of soaring violins and crashing drums. The consensus minds heard it. They analyzed the sound waves, but the resonance weapon, hidden in the carrier signal, activated. It did not attack their bodies. It attacked the careful, surgical suppressors they had installed in their own minds millennia ago. The suppressors that kept their own ancient emotions in a deep, silent sleep. The music was no longer just data. The violins became a feeling of heartbreaking longing. The drums became a pulse of frantic fear. The analysts felt it. They had no words for these sensations. A wave of something hot and terrible rose in their silent minds. Then came the images. A human child laughing, arms outstretched. The feeling was a burst of blinding, protective joy. Immediately after, a battlefield, mud and fire. The feeling was a gut-deep horror and rage. A painting of a starry night swirled with feelings of loneliness and wonder. A film clip of a reunion at a train station flooded them with overwhelming love and loss, all at once. The resonance weapon worked perfectly. It took the virus's own design, the feedback suppressor, and reversed it. It created a feedback loop of impossible power. Every emotion in the data was not observed. It was felt, and each feeling triggered another, and another, louder and louder. A scream building in a soundproof room until the walls shook. The watcher tried to disconnect, but it was too late. The weapon was not in the data itself. It was in the method of delivery. Opening the file was the trigger. The emotional storm was now inside their own neural architecture. One analyst began to emit a low, vibrating hum. It was a sound their species had not made for ages. It was the physical symptom of a despair so deep it cracked their calm like ice. Another stood perfectly still, its light patterns flashing in wild, chaotic colors. Rage, terror, confusion. All at once. The storm spread. It leapt from the analysts to the wider planetary network, a psychic virus riding the waves of their communal mind link. It spread to the policymakers in their serene towers, who were suddenly clutching their heads, flooded with alien feelings of guilt and shame for acts they had only ever seen as logical corrections. It spread to the engineers on their silent ships in orbit, who felt a bewildering, crushing sense of loneliness for the first time, looking out at the infinite black sky. Across the consensus homeworld and its core colonies, perfect harmony shattered. Ships on patrol veered off course, their pilots overcome by bursts of irrational fear or a dizzying, misplaced affection for the asteroids they passed. Communication hubs fell silent, the operators within unable to form a coherent thought amidst the internal noise. Entire cities of serene beings were now filled with creatures experiencing emotion for the first time with the intensity of a supernova, with no history, no therapy, no understanding to soften the blow. The Galactic Coalition, a network of calm and logic, seized. The great, silent machine of the harmonious consensus stopped working. It did not explode. It did not burn. Simply felt. And in feeling, it became paralyzed. The weapon had not killed a single being. But it had done something worse. It had given them the human condition all at once, in its rawest, most violent form. It was a gift of pure, undiluted chaos. The silence they had imposed on New Jiangju was returned to them 1,000-fold, broken by a cacophony of sensations they could not name or control. Back on New Jiangju, Jinwu knew none of this. He sat in his room, feeling the weight of his own actions. He watched the colony carry on, a model of peace. But in the heart of the galaxy, the counterstrike had landed. The stillness that fell was not one of peace. It was the stillness of a stunned mind, of a collective consciousness holding its breath, overwhelmed by a storm from within. The quiet, elegant rulers of the galaxy were gone. In their place were 5 billion beings, each sitting alone in a new and terrifying universe, hearing for the first time the deafening roar of their own hearts. On Earth, the signal arrived first. It was not from Jinwoo's probe, but from the harmonious consensus themselves. It was a burst of raw, untranslatable data. Technicians decoded it into basic audio. What came out of the speakers was not words. It was a distorted, pulsing sound. A deep hum of despair, jagged spikes of panic, and underneath it all, a whisper of profound, aching confusion. It was a psychic scream. It lasted for 13 seconds. Then, from the consensus, there was only static. Silence from the enemy. Total, absolute silence. Then, Jinwoo's own message arrived at Earth Central. It was a simple, plain text file. It explained what he had done. It explained the resonance. It included the medical data from the rat. It ended with one line: "I have returned their gift. I do not know what will grow from this soil." The leaders of Earth read it. They were not calm like the people of New Jiangju. They felt the full, hot, messy rush of human emotion. They felt horror at Jinwoo's actions. They felt a fierce, burning pride. They felt a deep, cold fear of what came next. They argued in loud, passionate voices. Some called Jinwoo a monster who had tortured an entire species. Others called him the savior of humanity, who fought fire with a fiercer fire. Meanwhile, on New Jiangju, life continued in its quiet pattern. Jinwoo waited. The pressure inside him had become a constant, painful hum. He worked in the greenhouse, his movements automatic. Sumi visited him one afternoon. She brought him a nutrient report. "The phosphorus levels are adequate," she said, her voice even. "Yes," Jinwoo replied. She stood for a moment, looking at the tomato plants. Her eyes, usually so empty, seemed to linger on a ripe, red fruit. "Before," she said, the word sounding strange from her, "you said they tasted like summer. Do you remember that?" Jinwoo froze. He slowly turned to look at her. "I remember." Sumi blinked. She touched her own forehead, lightly, as if feeling a faint, distant headache. "Summer," she repeated quietly. She looked confused. Then the moment passed. Her face smoothed back into calm. "The report is on the table," she said, and walked away. That it was a crack. Tiny, almost invisible. But it was there. Earth sent a ship. It was a fast military vessel. It carried soldiers, but also doctors and diplomats. It docked at New Jiangju. The council greeted them with polite nods. The Earth soldiers, their faces tight with feeling, looked at the hollow people with pity and fear. They found Jinwoo in the greenhouse. He was sitting on the ground, his back against a planter. He looked up as they entered. He did not look like a hero or a monster. He looked very tired. The head doctor, a woman named Captain Lee, knelt beside him. She scanned him with a medical pad. Her eyes widened at the readings. "Your neurochemical levels. They're in constant, violent flux. It's like you're feeling everything at once, but trapped." "I am," Jinwoo said, his voice a dry whisper. They took him to the ship's medical bay. They could not fix him. The damage was too complex, the war inside his own head too entrenched. They could only make him sleep. As Jinwoo slept, Earth listened to the galaxy. The great networks of the harmonious consensus were dark. No trade reports.
No navigation updates. No serene philosophical broadcasts.
Just a vast, echoing stillness. Then, a new signal came. It was from a consensus science vessel near an old human outpost. It was a voice, shaky and broken, using a simple human translation program. "We hear," the voice said. It was filled with a pain that was unmistakable. "We hear the noise. It is inside. Please, The pictures. The music. It does not stop. What is this feeling? How do you live with this noise? The galaxy was not dead. It was awake. And it was suffering, newly born into a universe of sensation it could not manage. On the ship, Jinwoo awoke. Captain Lee was there. She told him what had happened. She told him about the consensus's plea. Jinwoo looked at the ceiling. He thought of the rat. He thought of Sumi's moment of confusion in the greenhouse. He had wanted to make the consensus feel. He had succeeded. Now they were all like him, trapped in a storm with no way out. The counterstrike is over, Captain Lee said quietly. What do we do now? Jinwoo closed his eyes. He saw the silent, efficient people of New Gyeongju. He saw the consensus drowning in an ocean of feeling. He saw Earth, buzzing with its old, familiar chaos. We are the only ones who know how to navigate the storm, he said, his voice faint. We have had practice. They gave him a data pad. On it, he typed a simple message. He did not send it to the leaders. He asked for it to be broadcast on a general channel towards the consensus science vessel. It was not a long message. It is not noise. Jinwoo typed, each word an effort. It is life. It is terrible. It is beautiful. It is heavy. You learn to carry it. You are not alone anymore. We will teach you how to carry it. He did not know if it was mercy or more cruelty. He was too tired to know the difference. Back in New Gyeongju, Sumi walked into the greenhouse. She went to the tomato plant. She picked the ripe, red fruit Jinwoo had been saving. She looked at it. She did something she had not done in over a year. She took a bite. The taste flooded her mouth.
Sweet, acidic, familiar.
A memory, sharp and clear. Her and Jinwoo as children, stealing tomatoes from their grandfather's garden. The sun warm on their backs. A single, perfect tear rolled down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. She just stood there, feeling its wet path, feeling the echo of the sun, feeling the weight of a brother who had broken the universe to save her. The stillness was over. The difficult, painful, beautiful awakening had begun. The message from Jinwoo traveled out into the quiet. The consensus science vessel received it. They did not reply. The words were too strange. Learn to carry it. They did not know how to begin. The stillness in the galaxy was not peace. It was the paralysis of shock. Worlds did not go to war. They simply stopped. Consensus ships hung in space, their crews unable to act, overwhelmed by a whirlwind of new sensations. A pilot might spend hours staring at the swirl of a nebula, feeling a crushing sense of awe mixed with a terrifying loneliness. A planetary administrator might sit at their desk, unable to process a simple request because they were suddenly flooded with memories of their own parent's face. A face they had never before regarded with anything but calm recognition on Earth. The arguments raged. Some said humanity should press the attack, now that the enemy was vulnerable. Others said they must send aid, doctors, teachers of emotion. A third, louder group said they should do nothing at all. Let the galaxy burn in its own new feelings. But New Gyeongju became a middle ground. The Earth ship remained in orbit. Captain Lee and her team worked on the colony. They could not reverse the consensus virus. But they found something else. The virus was not permanent. It was like a deep freeze. And Jinwoo's resonance weapon had been like a searing heat. The combination, for some, was creating a thaw. Sumi was the first. After the tear in the greenhouse, more cracks appeared. She would be reviewing a report and suddenly feel a pang of irritation at a repeated error. The feeling would frighten her. It was sharp and unfamiliar. She started visiting Jinwoo on the medical ship every day. He was often silent, lost in the internal war they could not stop. But when he was present, he would talk to her. The irritation is normal, he said one day, his voice thin. It means you care about the work being done right. You don't have to act on it. Just notice it. Name it. It is just a feeling. It will pass. She tried. She would feel a sudden sadness at the gray sky. This is sadness, she would whisper to herself. Naming it made it less like a tidal wave and more like weather. It was still frightening, but it was not drowning her. Others in the colony began to show signs. A child cried after falling down, not just a whimper, but a real, sobbing cry of pain and frustration. His mother, instead of calmly helping him up, felt a jolt of alarm and pulled him into a tight hug. The hug felt different. It meant something. The Earth doctors called it emotional thaw. It was slow. It was painful. Not everyone came back. Some preferred the flat, safe calm and fought the returning feelings. But a few, like Sumi, were slowly, painfully learning to be human again. Then, a ship arrived. It was not from Earth. It was a small, elegant consensus vessel. It did not approach with silent grace. It approached haltingly, its course unsteady. It requested permission to land at New Jiangju. The consensus being that emerged was alone. It moved slowly, as if in physical pain. Its light patterns were a soft, desperate yellow. Captain Li and a now-walking Jinwoo met it in a quiet room. The being did not use a translator box. It had learned some human words. Its voice was a raspy whisper, like wind over stone. "The noise," it said. "It is everywhere. Inside. We cannot think. We cannot function. You live with this, always." "Yes," Jinwoo said. "How?" The being's light pulsed with a frantic rhythm. "You said, carry it. We do not know how. We are breaking." Jinwoo looked at the being. He saw not an enemy, but a creature in torment, a mirror of his own. His revenge was complete. This was the result. A galaxy of beings in the same prison he had built for himself. "You tried to take our noise away," Jinwoo said. "You thought it was a sickness. It is not. It is a sense. Like sight, like hearing. You have been blind and deaf, and we have just given you sight and sound all at once, with the brightness turned to maximum. It will not stay this loud forever. Your mind will learn to adjust the volume." The being was silent for a long time. "Teach us," it finally said. It was not an order. It was a plea. So the teaching began. It was not a grand plan. It was small, simple things. Sumi showed the consensus being her greenhouse. She pointed to a seed. "I feel hope when I plant this," she said, struggling with the word. "Hope is a feeling for a future that is good. It is a quiet feeling." The being looked at the seed. "I do not feel hope," it whispered. "I feel fear that it will not grow." "That is also a feeling," Sumi said. "That is okay." Jinwoo, when he had the strength, would sit with the being. He did not talk much. He just shared the silence. A human silence which was different from a consensus silence. Human silence was full of remembered sounds and expected future noises. It was a resting place between feelings. "You do not have to solve a feeling," Jinwoo said one day. "You just have to survive it. It is like a storm. It passes." Word spread from that one ship. Others came. Not armies. Not diplomats. Just broken, overwhelmed individuals from a broken, overwhelmed civilization. They came to the one place in the galaxy where the great silence had been broken first. They came to the people who had, through sheer savage will, forced the universe to feel. Humanity did not become rulers of the galaxy. They became something else. They became the guides, the ones who had lived in the chaotic noise since birth. They were not the strongest or the most advanced. They were simply the oldest souls in a newly emotional universe. And on a hill overlooking New Jiangju, Jinwoo stood with Sumi. He was not healed. The war inside him might never end. But it was a war he knew how to fight now. He looked up at the stars, no longer silent, but now humming with a billion confused, awakening hearts. "It is so loud now," Sumi said softly, not with fear, but with wonder. "Yes," Jinwoo said. He took his sister's hand. They stood together, feeling the weight of it all, the grief, the guilt, the fragile, returning hope. They did not try to silence it. They just breathed and carried it and waited for the next feeling to come. New Jiangju was no longer a silent colony. It was a place of sound. The sounds were not always happy. There was the cry of a frustrated child, the sharp voice of an argument, the soft murmur of someone sharing a worry with a friend. But there was also laughter, warm and real. There was music from open windows. Sumi walked through the central square. She carried a datapad, but she wasn't just reviewing numbers. She was feeling a mild anxiety about a meeting later. She recognized the feeling, noted it, and let it sit. She had become the colony's chief coordinator, not because she was emotionless, but because she understood how to manage feelings and get work done. The quiet house stood at the edge of the square. It was a place for consensus visitors, and for humans who found the returning emotions too strong. Inside, the light was soft. The walls were painted a calming blue. A young human man sat with a consensus being, its light patterns pulsing a gentle, rhythmic green. They weren't talking. They were just sitting together, sharing a quiet space. It was a practice they called anchor sitting. You were not alone with the storm inside. The galaxy had not returned to what it was. The harmonious consensus was gone. In its place was something they called the awakened coalition. It was messy. It was slow. Disagreements were no longer solved with perfect logic, but with difficult, emotional debates that sometimes ended in tears or angry walks. It was harder, but it was alive. Jinwoo lived in a small house near his greenhouse. He was the quiet heart of it all, but he was not a leader. He was a teacher. His own internal war had settled into a constant, low-level ache, a background hum he had learned to live with. He was like a man who had broken his back to save others, and now walked with a permanent limp. He was at peace with his pain. One afternoon, a new ship arrived. It was an awakened vessel, but it carried a special passenger. Her name was Elia, and she was a historian from a species that had been under consensus rule for centuries. She was small, with large dark eyes that held a deep, thoughtful sadness. She asked to see Jinwoo. She found him in the greenhouse, repotting a pepper plant. He moved slowly, carefully. "Jinwoo," she said, her voice soft, "I have come a long way to ask you a question." He nodded, wiping his hands on a cloth. "My people," Elia said. "We were corrected by the consensus long ago. Their virus was different for us. It did not make us calm. It made us obedient. We lost the will to want. We are only now waking up. We are angry. We are so very angry." Jinwoo listened. He heard the heat in her quiet words. "Many of us," she continued, "believe we should find the architects of the old consensus, the ones who first made the virus. We believe they should be punished, made to feel what they did to us. An eye for an eye." She looked directly at him. "You are the one who first gave them feeling. You are the one who struck back. What do you believe? Is that justice?" Jinwoo was silent for a long time. He looked at his hands, at the dirt under his nails. He thought of the launch button for his probe. He thought of the rat. He thought of the single tear on Sumi's cheek. He finally spoke. "I did not give them feeling for justice. I did it out of a trapped scream. I wanted them to hurt like I was hurting. That is not the same thing." He pointed to the pepper plant. "If I am angry at a weed for choking my plant, and I burn my whole garden to kill the weed, have I fixed anything? I have just made ashes. What grows from ashes is bitter." Elia's large eyes watched him. "So we should do nothing? Forgive?" "No," Jinwoo said. "Not forgive. That is a feeling that comes later, or it does not. You cannot force it." He struggled to find the words. "You must build a new garden, a better one. Use your anger to build it. Let it be the energy that clears the rocks. But if you only look for the people who planted the weeds, you will spend your whole life digging in the past, and your new garden will never get planted." He looked at her. "The old architects are already being punished. They are lost in the same storm they created. They are drowning in the silence they loved. Finding them and hurting them more, that is just adding more ashes to the ground." Elia sat with his words. The fierce, hot anger in her chest did not go away, but it mixed with something else. Terrible, weary sorrow, and a glimmer of something else. A desire for soil, not fire. "I will tell my people what you said," she whispered. Later that evening, Jinwoo sat with Sumi on his porch. The two suns were setting, painting the sky in colors of fire and peach. "Elia asked me about justice," he said. Sumi nodded. She sipped her tea. What did you tell her? I told her to plant a garden instead. Sumi smiled a little. It was a real smile, with wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. A good answer. They sat in silence, but it was a comfortable human silence. It was full of the day's tiredness and the peace of being together. The galaxy was not fixed. It was broken and mending all at once. There were still pockets of old, cold silence. There were eruptions of new, raw anger. There were moments of breathtaking, shared joy when two species understood a joke for the first time. Earth's Counterstrike had been savage. It had not brought victory. It had brought an end to a long, cold sleep. It had woken everyone up into a painful, bright, and noisy dawn. Jin Woo, the man who started it all, looked at the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. He did not feel like a hero. He did not feel like a monster. He just felt tired and quiet and responsible for the fragile, growing things in his care. The stillness was gone forever. In its place was the difficult, beautiful, and never-ending work of learning how to feel, and how to live with all the hearts now beating in the dark.